Okay guys, on the first part of the login page, we made this page and the login API. But in this part, these two will be connected to each other. So after clicking on the login button, you will be logged in and see a message like this. The login link will be removed and you only see the name of the user with its user menu, and we also implement the logout functionality. So if you click on logout, the user will be logged out and the login link will be appeared at the top of our website. Follow me on this lesson if you like to know how. Okay, in this step, we want to connect the login page component to the login API by generating the user service. So let's go and generate the user service. First of all, from the terminal menu, select new terminal, then go to the front end folder, then write ngGS for generating the service inside services folder with the name of user. Then press enter. Here we go. It says that user service is created. Let's check it out inside the Explorer. Inside the app, services, check out the user service. You can see that it is created successfully. Now for holding the user data, we need to generate a model. So let's go to the shared folder, right click on the models and select new file, then write user.ts. Here write export class user. For creating the user class, its first member is ID, required with the type of string. Email, required with the type of string. Name, required string. Address, required string. Most of them are string. Token, required string. And just the last one, that's isAdmin, is required, but its type is Boolean. So we created our user model. Now we can close user.ts, and here we can define the user subject and the user observable to expose the user data to the outside of the user service. Let's start with the user subject. Write private user subject that is equal to new behavior subject with the type of user with the initial value of new user. The behavior subject has read and write mode inside it. But we don't want anything outside of the user service be able to write anything inside the user subject. So we just need to expose the user observable. That is in fact user subject that is converted into an observable. So write public user observable with the type of observable of user. Now here inside the constructor, we can say this.userObservable is equal to this.userSubject.asObservable. So in fact, the user observable is the read-only version of the user subject. And that's what we want to expose to the outside of the user service. Now let's create the login method that has an input with the name of user login with the type of iUserLogin that we didn't create it yet. The I at the beginning indicates that this is an interface. It is not a class. And the main difference between an interface and a class is that you cannot create a new instance from an interface. Let's open up the Explorer and inside the shared folder, right click and select new folder, then write interfaces. So we put all of our interfaces inside this folder. Right click on it and select new file, then write iUserLogin.ts. Then close the Explorer. Here you just need to write export interface iUserLogin. So let's add the members. We have only two members. The first one is email with the type of string, and the second one is password with the type of string. As you can see, we don't need to put any exclamation mark or question mark or set the default values for it, because by default, all the fields inside the interface are required. We want it to be required so we can easily use our interface. Okay, let's close the iUserLogin and import it here by pressing Ctrl dot and selecting the import option. Let's set the output of the login to observable with the type of user and create the body of the login. Here I want to have an HTTP request to the server, to the user login URL. So we need to inject the HTTP client inside here. So go to the constructor and write private HTTP with the type of HTTP client coming from Angular command HTTP. Press enter. So we have the HTTP client here. Now inside the login method, we can write this.http.post. Then we need to set the return type, that is user. We want to get a user from the server. Now we need to define the API URL here. I want to define it inside the URLs, just like the food URLs. It's a very good habit to do that because you can handle all of your URLs on a single place. So from the Explorer, shared constant, select urls.ts. Then at the end of the file, write export const user underline login underline URL equal to base URL plus /API/users/login. This is the API URL that we defined inside our server. If you define something else, you need to use that address. Close the urls.ts, it is ready. Now we can use user underline login underline URL, put a comma, and for the post method, we always need to pass a body to the server. For the body, we want to pass the user login that has the email and the password. We need to return this because this HTTP method will return an observable with the type of user, exactly the return type that we defined for our login method. Here I want to show a beautiful alert when the login was successful or when there is an error for the login. You can say, okay, you can use subscribe to get the value of the server. No, we cannot, because if you use subscribe, the return type will be subscription, not observable, okay? For the cases that you want only tap the result without changing its value, without breaking the flow of the observable, you can pipe your observable with the tap function that is part of RxJS. Use it inside the pipe. Then you can pass an object that its next member will handle the happy result that we have the user, and its error member will handle the unhappy result and give us an error response. And we can handle the error there. And as you can see, the result of the pipe is still an observable, so it will not break the flow of the observable. Here on the next handler, I want to show a happy message. We call it toast messages, something that come up here and goes out after a couple of seconds. For doing this, I want to use NGX Toast R. That is the implementation of Toast R package for Angular. For using the NGX Toast R, we need to do three things. We need to import it into our app module. We need to import browser animations module because for its animation, we need it. And we need to add its CSS inside the Angular JSON file. Let's install it first. From the view menu, go to the terminal, clear everything, and make sure that you are inside the frontend folder. Then write npm install ngx-toast R, not toaster, toast R. Then press enter. Here we go, no errors, so far so good. Close the terminal, then from the Explorer, go to the app module. At the imports part, write import, write toast R module, press enter if it is coming from NGX Toast R. So it will be add here, and the second import should be browser animations module. This one is a little bit tough. Visual Studio cannot understand it. So you need to write the whole thing. From Angular platform browser / animations. So browser animations module are coming from Angular / platform browser / animations. Let's import the browser animations module after the browser module. Don't forget to put the comma here at the end of it. Then add the toast R module at the end of the imports. Now close the app module. Now we just need to add the NGX Toast R CSS file to the Angular JSON. So from the Explorer, in the roots of the project, in the frontend folder directly, select angular.json, then scroll down to find the styles. Here you can see styles/styles.css. This is our global styles inside the project. Then put a comma here, and inside the double quotes, write node underline modules. You shouldn't do typo here. ngx-toastr/toastr.css. This is the address of the package inside the node modules, and this is the CSS file inside this package. Here we go. We did all the steps for adding the ngx toastr. Let's go to the user service, and inside the next, that is the happy part, let's first update the user subject. We are getting a new user from the server, so the user should be updated. Write this.userSubject.next and pass the user as the next value of the user subject. Now let's inject the toastr service here. Put a comma, write private toastr service with the type of toastr service coming from ngx toastr. Press enter, and here write this.toastr service.success. For the message, write welcome to Foodmine and put the name of the user here. And for the title, I want to say login successful. One thing that I forget to mention is how you can configure the ngx toastr default behavior. Let's go to the Explorer, and inside the app module, you cannot use toastr module like this. You need to write toastr module.forRoot. By doing this, it will be used for current project because it is the root project. There is no other project. This is the only project, and by doing this, it will be used for this project. And inside this method, you can pass your global options for the behavior of toastr. I want to set its timeout to 3 seconds. So the message stays 3 seconds on the screen and will go away. Its position, I want to be bottom right. So let's give it toast-bottom-right. This class is defined inside the CSS that we add inside the Angular JSON. And for the last option, newest on top, I want to say false. So the new messages will stay here and the older messages go up. This is my personal preference. If you don't like it, you can leave all options to default and just use toastr module for root method. Close the app module, then get back to the user service. The successful message is done. Let's go for the unhappy part and write this.toastr service.error. So we're getting a red error message. We normally send the error from the server, so it is inside the error response.error failed. And for the title, write login failed. Now let's use this login method inside the login component. So go to the Explorer, and from the components, pages, open up the login page and login page component.ts file. Here, after the alert inside the submit method, we need to add the user service login method. But before that, let's inject the user service here. Put a comma here, private user service inside the constructor with the type of user service. Let's move it to the next line, okay? Let's use it inside the submit. Write this.userService.login, then create an object. For the email, we want to pass this value. And for the password, let's use this value. Here we go. And remove the alert. We don't need it. Now it is okay. But normally, after finishing the login process, we want to return the user to where it was before. For doing this, we need to add a field inside this class with the name of return URL. That is an empty string by default. But we need to get it using activated route. And we need to return the user using the router. So we need to inject both of them inside this component. Put a comma here and write private activated route with the type of activated route. And for the next injection, write private router with the type of router. If it's not imported, press Ctrl dot and import it. Scroll down inside ng on init, semicolon, on the next line write this dot return URL is equal to this dot activated route dot snapshot. Snapshot means the latest value of the activated route. Normally inside the login page, we just want the latest value so we can use it. By using the snapshot, we don't need to subscribe to it. We can just get the latest value by using the snapshot. And for the value, we want query params, not params. because query params are everything after the question mark. So, for example, it will be question mark return URL equal to checkout page, like this. And we read this return URL from the query params. So let's write return URL here and remove this part. So we are getting the return URL each time that we come into the login page component. Now inside the submit method, after a happy login, we need to subscribe, give it a handler. We didn't get the user here because we don't need it here. And this is the happy part. So here we want to say this.router.navigate by URL, move the user to this.return URL. Okay, the submit method that is responsible for login is ready. But we need to restart the front-end Angular server, because we changed the angular.json, and when you change the angular.json, you need to restart your server. So from the view, select terminal and select the bash that is running your front end and kill it. Then go inside the front end once again and write npm start and press enter. Here we go, it is compiled successfully. Let's go to the browser and refresh the page here. And here write jane@gmail.com, the email that we set inside the data.ts on the server, and its password was 12345. Then click on login. As you can see, we have this beautiful toast message. You can save the password on your Chrome if you like. So on the next time you have it on the login page. But as you can see, by default, we will be redirected to the home page because we didn't set the return URL inside the address bar. Now if we put a question mark and write return URL equal to /cart-page and press enter, and the /cart page is the address of our cart page. Now after a successful login, we need to be redirected to the cart page. We do it just for testing the return URL functionality. So click on login. As you can see, we are inside the cart page. But it is not done yet, because inside the user service, we are not saving user anywhere. It is just inside the RAM. It should be saved inside the local storage, because you don't want to log in again when you press F5 and refresh the page. So let's add two methods to the end of the user service. It is exactly similar to the cart page. The first one is private, set user to local storage. It gets the user as input. Here, for setting the user inside the local storage, we need to use local storage that is part of JavaScript and .setItem. It needs a key, so with this key we can set the item into the local storage and we can get the item from the local storage. So I want to define this key at the top before the class as a constant. So write const user key equal to user, just a string. By doing this, we can use this user key instead of the user string literal. And anytime that we want to change it, we can come over here and change its value. So go down inside the set item, use user key. Then we need to convert this user using JSON.stringify, and we need to pass the user into it. JSON.stringify is part of JavaScript default library. So this method is finished. Let's go and add the other method that will be used for getting the item from the local storage. So write private get user from local storage. It returns a user, exactly the opposite of this one. First of all, we need to get the user JSON from the local storage. So we need to write const user JSON equal to local storage dot get item user underline key. Exactly the same key as the set item. So when you set an item with a key, you need to get it with the same key. So we have the JSON representation of our objects. Now we need to parse this JSON and convert it into the user object. But first of all, we need to check if the user JSON is not null or empty. Then we need to return JSON.parse user JSON, that is this string we get from the local storage, and return it as user. And if there is no user inside the local storage, we just need to return a new user. So anytime that we use get user from local storage, If there is a value inside the local storage, it will be parsed and converted into a user object. Otherwise, we are just going to have a new empty user. Now we can use this get method at the top instead of this new user. So write this dot get user from local storage, because we are going to get the latest value inside the local storage by default. But if there is none inside the local storage, we will get just a new user object as the default behavior. So it works in any situation. And for set user to the local storage, we need to put it after a successful login. So inside the next, write this dot set user to local storage and pass the user inside it. Now if we go to the browser and if we do login, we need to see Jane instead of the John here. And if you remember, we added a fake name here to change it with the actual one when it's the time. And now it's the time. So let's go to the code, and from the Explorer, go inside the partials and header and open up the header component TS file. Here, first of all, we need to inject the user service. So write user service with the type of user service. And inside the constructor, we need to subscribe to the user service just like how we subscribe to the cart. So write user service dot user observable dot subscribe new user. And inside here, we need to set the user field. So we need to define it user with the type of user, and it is required. So scroll down, and inside the subscribe of user observable, write this dot user equal to new user. Very good. Now, anytime that we set the user inside the user service, it's going to be set inside the user in the header component. Now we need to go inside the header component HTML file, and here instead of the John, we need to put double curly braces and write user.name. Now if you go to the browser, you could see that we have the name of the actual user. It's pretty good. Now the last thing that we want to do in this lesson is implementing the logout functionality. And we need to remove the login from here if the user is already logged in. So let's implement the simpler one, that is removing this login when the user is already logged in. Inside the code, here for showing this LI, we need to put an ngF. The user.token is not available. Don't forget to put the exclamation mark. So if the user.token is not available, it means the user is not logged in. So we need to show the login link. Otherwise, we shouldn't show it. Now, if we go to the browser, we are not seeing the login link here. Now let's go and implement the logout functionality. Inside the user service, we need to add another method with the name of logout. So here, after the login, press enter and write logout. We just need to set this dot user subject dot next. The next value of user subject should be an empty user, so a new user. Then we need to write local storage dot remove item user key. So this user that we set should be removed inside the logout. Then we need to refresh the page by writing window.location.reload. We do the last step because if you are in a credential page and you do the logout, you need to be redirected to the login page. I will tell you how it works, but for now, just put it here. Now we need to go to the header component and use this logout method. Here after the ng on init, write logout and use this dot user service. We don't have access to it because we didn't define it using the access modifier. So put a private at the beginning of it and the error will go away. And inside the user service, call logout. Now we need to use it inside the template file of header component. Here find the logout link, then for its click event, call the logout method. Now if we go to the browser, and if we click on the logout, we will see the login. But we still have a problem here that we have the user menu here, even the user is logged out. So we need to put an ngF here to remove it when the user is not logged in. Go to the code, and here for this li, the class of menu container that belongs to the user, put an ngF when the user.token is valid. Here for make this more meaningful, we can go to the header component TS file and write get isAuth. That means is authenticated. We can return this.user.token. So when this.user.token is valid, it means the user is authenticated. And we can go back to the HTML file, and instead of the user.token, we can say isAuth and isAuth. So here, if the user is not authenticated, the login link will be shown. And here, if the user is authenticated, the user menu will be shown. Now, if we go to the browser, we could see that we don't have the user menu here. Now, if we go to the login and click on login, we don't see the login and we see the user menu, and the logout works perfectly too. Okay, this was for this session. On the next session, we are going to create components for everything that you see here to make it beautiful and reusable for all over the project. You've been watching Code with Nasir, and I hope to see you next time.